Board members are present here at the City Hall along with members of the public. Please be sure to submit to Mr. Floyd a speaker form if you wish to speak on an appropriate time on the agenda. Others among the public are also attending this meeting through the digital platform that is accessible at the board's website. With the assistance of the Communications Department and the Information Technology Department, this meeting is live streamed on the Ethics Office webpage, and we're recording it for future reference. There is a delay with the online communications, and we should all should be patient. We thank those members of the City of Tallahassee for their support. At this moment, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Floyd, would you call roll?
Okay. Carlos Ray.
Present.
Gwen Graham.
Here.
Ernie Payne.
Here.
Ruby Barr.
Here.
Brian Smith.
Here.
Kristen Costa. And Robin Blank.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. I'll now go over the procedures for public comment conducting the meeting. For those attending the meeting online, please make sure your microphone is muted. Last week, we asked the public to make requests by email to the ethics@talgov.com by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting, if they wish to speak online on agenda or non-agenda items. Those who have submitted their names will be given a chance to speak as scheduled. For those of you who are present and wish to speak, please complete a request form and forward it to Ethics Officer Dwight Floyd. Has everyone received the agenda supporting documents for this meeting?
Yes.
With regard to the agenda or procedures for conducting today's business, are there any questions or concerns?
Should we close that door?
Yeah, go ahead.
I can get it. Okay, no worries.
Moving on to approval of minutes for April 20th, 2021. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes for last meeting?
Move accept.
I have a motion for Mr. Payne to accept, and a second for Mr. Smith. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. At this moment, we'll move on to public comment on agenda items. Mr. Floyd, do we have any comments?
Yes, we have two public comments. The first is Peter Butzine.
All right.
Where would you like me to do this?
You can do it right there.
So my name is Peter Butzine, excuse me, 1628 Woodgate Way. I'm here on behalf of Citizens for Ethics Reform, and I would like to comment on agenda items 9 and 10. As I stated last month, we disagree that the current definition of misuse of position is broad and leaves little room for the ethics officer and the board members to make practical decisions. Our understanding is that the board's concern came out of its shade meeting relating to Commissioner Porter's expressing support for specific local businesses during COVID. I found nothing in that transcript, and I've read it twice now, that suggests that there should be a problem with not using corruptly as a burden of proof. This was unanimously defeated at the board's recommendation to the City Commission from 2 years ago. I remember when Commissioner Graham made the argument against using corruptly. In my opinion, the board acted properly because Commissioner Porter clearly received no special benefit. I think the only disagreement I might have had with that decision is that it went to the second stage where probably it could have been dismissed in the first stage. While a case could be made that the businesses she endorsed received a benefit, it clearly was a de minimis benefit. It was acting in the same manner as her fellow commissioners, and therefore I would say it was not defined as a special benefit. Furthermore, the three examples from Miami-Dade, Palm Beach County, and Jacksonville correlate misuse of public position to obtaining special benefit or privilege. The Palm Beach ordinance uses the should know with the exercise of reasonable care as the burden of proof. And while the Jacksonville ordinances imposes a more stringent proof of intent, it also defines misuse of public position as resulting from a special privilege or exemption. And regarding the penalties and letters of instruction, I noticed that Miami-Dade, Palm Beach County, and Jacksonville all provide dismissal of a complaint at the board's discretion. And while Tallahassee's reform ordinance does not explicitly provide for dismissal, it does allow for what's called written letters of instruction, which could include dismissal. However, with that said, we would not oppose if this board wanted to amend the Tallahassee ordinance to provide the board with the ability to dismiss a complaint at its discretion, providing that its reasons for such dismissal are in writing and made available to the public. We stand, therefore, by our original support for this board's knows or should know with the exercise of reasonable care as the preferred burden of proof for misuse of public position, and we will oppose any efforts to weaken that provision. With regard to item number 10, I think there's no doubt that Senate Bill 1890 unfortunately preempts Tallahassee's more stringent $250 campaign contribution limit. And this bill obviously ignores 60% of the Tallahassee voters who passed this reduced contribution limit as part of the 2014 charter amendment. Our coalition will urge candidates for mayor and city commissioner and city commission to voluntarily abide by the $250 limit in keeping with the wishes of Tallahassee voters. We will also ask candidates to encourage their supporters to use the charter amendment's modest match of personal contributions to encourage small donors. And at the June meeting, we plan to have some language for this pledge, and we're going to hope that perhaps this ethics board might also endorse the pledge. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Ben Wilcox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As always, thank you for your service on this board. I'm Ben Wilcox with Citizens for Ethics Reform, and I'm speaking to agenda item number 7, old business, specifically the revision to the lobbyist language in the city charter. And today I'd like to thank Mr. Floyd and Mr. Reed for following up on your previous meeting and writing the cover letter for the lobby regulation ordinances. It was very, very well done and exactly what is needed to accompany the ordinances as they go before the city commission. I would just urge the board to act quickly now and put those ordinances in the city's court, so to speak. Thank you.
So I'll make sure from the public that there's no further comment. You have a comment?
Yes.
Sir.
My name is Stanley Sims. I'm at 1320 Avondale Way. I'm here tonight because I think it's imperative that we as a citizen have equal access to our government. In establishing this board, we were hopeful that it would do that. I'm right now wrestling with the calamity. I'm vaccinated, so I don't want to offend anyone. But I can't talk with that thing on my, it's too much for my health. I have situations down in the Frenchtown community where the citizens of this community, we ask you all to come, and I know that your powers are not as grand like we want, but something I believe that you all could do for my situation. Because the people of Frenchtown don't have a lobbyist. And so they don't fit into this scheme what has your main attention. And it's been very challenging for me because I can't show you how people without a lobbyist is being hurt just as much as people with a lobbyist. I've got illegal sidewalks down in Frenchtown. I've got ambulance hitting trees, cars hitting trees, not one tree, with an S. And I cannot have access to this government right here. And the areas down in Frenchtown are so grave. It's a collaborative effort, Gwen. It calls for the county, it calls for the Leon County Schools and the city to come together. That's the magnitude of this problem. As of today, the secretary, not the city manager, the secretary is not available to see me. Don't know when she'll be available to see me. And to see me for what? To help me set a meeting with the city manager. I have been trying now for over 2 years. 2 months for this particular area. And it's not just me. Well, it is just me. He doesn't answer because when I saw that video and I sent it out to everyone, when I sent you of those kids walking in the street, a lot of elected officials called him. He answered the phone. He talked to them. And when I say him, I mean the city manager. And he told them he would get in touch with me. Why do I need to talk to him? We have sidewalks in Frenchtown, Mr. Smith, this wide. Inside of that wide sidewalk is a telegram post, this wide. On this side is Old Bay Ridge Road. Not only do I have children down there, I've got individuals that are in wheelchair. Yeah, they're on drugs. Yeah, they have mental cases, but they're still human beings. They, according to ADA, they are not walking on legal sidewalks. And I just think that I should be able to express that to my city manager. And I think it's select enforcement of a hardship where I have talked to all other leaders. He's promised that he would talk to me, but he's done that before and have never done so. And so I need help. And I don't know how to get it from you guys. I can't get it from Citizens of Integrity because I can't join their group. So where do I go? Anyone?
I think we have any comments at this time. Any other public comments on agenda items?
We get ignored again. Ignored again.
Just want to make sure that we have a lot of things on the agenda today that will be discussed, that there's not going to be an open forum or a public or workshop. So if you have any discussions you want to raise now in the regular 7A, 9 or 10, please do it now. If not, we move forward as a board and we will discuss it with any discussion amongst the board itself.
Wait, I do want to say something for the record, because I don't want to think that anybody feels that they're getting ignored.
Thank you.
However, it is my understanding that there are some things that are within our purview, and then there are some things that are completely out of our purview. And with all due respect, and I'm not the attorney for the board, even though I am an attorney, but it just appears to me that the situation dilemma that you're experiencing is completely outside of our purview and that we have no authority to address it. And I don't think that it's not anybody's intent to disrespect or ignore, which is why I wanted to address it, but it's just not within our purview.
I appreciate your comments.
And I second what Ms. Barr just said. You know, I care about you. We've been talking for a very long time now. But this board cannot address the issues you've just raised. It's just not within our jurisdiction. It doesn't mean that we disrespect you or are not listening. We are, but we don't have any authority to deal with the issues you brought forward.
Thank you.
Okay?
That makes me feel better, a little better.
You know, I'm trying for a long time, Stanley.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 6.
Mr. Chair, summary report, and I won't go through all the details. You have a list of activities. I've spent a great deal of time developing a course, which we'll talk about in another agenda. I will say what appears successful, and then a lot of the month-to-month matters. Any questions about the activities in the summary? And then you have the budget, and in looking at the budget, I don't see anything that stands out. You can tell that I use John a lot. I give him a break every once in a while. Poor fella, he hears from me night and day, literally. You see one bill from outside counsel, and that was a bill that fell through the cracks, so we took care of that. And then the 139 is software that I purchased to help me with my grammar and writing. So people think I write well, and it's actually the software that helps me write well. Any questions about the budget? And then the monthly issue report, I received one call. It was actually in reference to a citizen that was concerned about trees being shredded in her neighborhood, and to the point that she was considering going to the emergency room. She didn't leave any contact information, but she did say in her call that she did receive a call from the city. She wasn't satisfied with it, I guess, but the city did address it. And so there was nothing further for me to do. Without contact information, I couldn't call her back. So I'm recommending that this call be closed.
Do I have a motion? I have a motion from Ms. Costa, second from Mr. Payne. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to old business. And now the revision to the lobbyist language for the city charter. Mr. Reed.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, at the last meeting, this board directed staff to draft a cover letter to accompany the proposed ordinances that this board worked on in 2020 regarding the lobbyist ordinance. We have introduced a letter for the City Commission, 7 pages in length, that addresses ordinance 1 and 2 as well as 3. This board had previously directed us to present only ordinance 1 and 2 to the City Commission. I would ask at this time that the board move and vote that we also introduce the third, since they are somewhat of a package deal. And when we did reach out to staff, there were some questions on ordinance number 2, which is a charter amendment. It's very broad. How can it be that broad? And I think it helps clarify this with those in the city attorney's office and elsewhere, that it's not as broad once you look at the third ordinance that seems to narrow the responsibilities. So provide some background on why this issue was brought to our attention. As you can see, there were numerous reports in the newspaper and on television regarding the lobbyist language. The first ordinance, you recall, has 4 recommendations that could be done now without an amendment to the charter. 1, revises the definition. Second, provides a registration of particular issues, which they kind of already do on the form, but this just codifies an ordinance, and also requires a contact log to be maintained and submitted by the lobbyist, not the city staff or commissioner. Recommendation number 3 bans contingency fees for local lobbying, and recommendation 4 requires that the city clerk, treasurer clerk maintain a website that shows compensation reports. Ordinance number 2 is the charter amendment, which expands the jurisdiction of this board to also include lobbyists. At this time, we're only authorized to, we only have jurisdiction over public officials and city staff, but not outside third parties. So this extends that jurisdiction to those that have subjected themselves to the city as lobbyists before the city. Draft ordinance 20 ORDO3, which is the one that we had not previously voted to send, but kind of follows up on O2. This is language that cannot be adopted until the charter is amended. This expands our jurisdiction to essentially give this board appellate review for penalties and any type of punishment that's imposed against lobbyists who violate the existing registration ordinance. It then, recommendation 2 incorporates our role into that. As I said, it's simply an appellate level. It still is going to be handled at the primary level by the treasurer clerk. And that is it. Like I said, ordinance number 3 cannot be acted on at this time. It's contingent on ordinance number 2 passing, going on the ballot, being passed by the electors of the city, and then we could revisit 3. But I felt it was important to give the city commission a good 30,000-foot view of the entire issue, that we send that their way.
Thank you, Mr. Reed, great work on this. Open up to the board, any comments?
I have a question. The date is today. Has it been sent, or is this?
No, this was subject to your approval.
Okay.
Based on the instructions, so this has not been sent.
Okay.
No comments? We have to go for approval.
Yeah, I guess a vote on approval of the letter, as well as to send along ordinance number 3. We do them together, I think.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to include the 3rd as well as approve the letter.
A motion.
Second.
Ms. Costa makes a motion, Mr. Smith seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 7B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's ethics course. And before we go to that, let me just say that when I received the letter from John, I told him I thought it was well-written, and it really helped me
Yes.
understand the issue. So I think it should be clear to anybody what the issue is. So I just want to compliment him on that. I do it in private, so I thought I'd do it in public. 7B,
And can I say something?
yes, ma'am.
There's something you just said that I think is going to come up again when you get down to 9. That language should be clear to everybody what it means. And I think that's what we're struggling with on number 9. So just wanted to take that opportunity to use what you just said.
Yes, ma'am.
Bring up a point.
Okay, 7B, the last meeting, I shared with you an online course, and this course, as I stated before, is required that all 10,000 plus employees take this course, have taken ethics course annually. I took a stab at developing the course with the support and help of city employees. It was still the legal review, by John and one of the city attorneys. It was thoroughly reviewed in that respect. I had assistance with creating scenarios that the employees could relate to. We spent a little bit of money, and it really was, I think we spent about, I don't remember now, maybe $4,000 and something dollars. I've never done a course that cheaply, period. And I wrote a lot of courses for the state. I probably never spent more than $10,000 to $16,000 on a single course, and those were textbook type courses and not online. A course like this one would cost anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 to have it done. I think that's part of the reason the city was excited. It's out there now. Last count, 300 and some people had taken it with very few issues. They keep me updated. They're still seem to be excited. And I'm pleased with the support from the communications department, the technology, HR, city manager's office. And I'm probably going to miss somebody, but they were all involved. And I did splash my picture at the end, and there is a statement at the end with me talking. I think you also saw the email where it went out, and I was included on the signature on that. So the board is thoroughly recognized for its efforts with the course. And what I'm asking you to do now is adopt this as a ethics board course.
Floyd,
Yes, sir.
I just have a question on the process. I understand that the people can take the course as many times as they want until they complete it to satisfaction. Are records kept as far as how often a person has to take the test, or?
Well, it's in the system, yes. And they are collecting, actually is going to a report, and that's where IT comes in. The employee gets recognition that they completed it. It's a whole process because it's tied to their merit increases.
There you go.
So it's taken very seriously.
Are the supervisors notified how many times it took this? And could that be used, could that be weaponized in any way?
No, because it's really just sort of like a knowledge check. And so the questions are built to help them learn. So if they don't get it right, there are little hints that are given and to help them figure it out. And by the time they get to the last quiz, there are no hints on the last quiz. They should know it. And people aren't having a problem, so.
It is a good course.
Thank you. I haven't had time to be excited about anything, but I'm happy.
A motion?
So move.
Ms. Farr makes a motion.
Second.
Mr. Payne seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Enthusiastic eye.
Great job.
This is great.
Thank you.
Good job.
Get my enthusiastic part.
Moving on to agenda item number 8, approval of advisor opinions. Mr. Reed?
Yes, and if I could go back, I feel like I owe Mr. Floyd. He has done an exceptional job on these ethics courses. He calls me day and night. I don't think he's in touch with his wife anymore. He spends so much time on this issue. He's really been very devoted to it. And we're very fortunate to have him. And I see he's got the articulate.com, so I've already noticed he is talking much gooder. So it does appear to be working. So I wanted to just praise him. We have 2 advisory opinions. I think last time we were together, we adopted our first, and I think we said that this board would like to try to help people from getting into trouble, then coming after them after they do. So we have had a couple of individuals that have reached us regarding the gift prohibition. So we could probably handle these together or separately, whichever way the board wishes, but I can go ahead and introduce them together. The first was relatively simple. It was an individual that associates with city vendors, and off hours, they go out, they enjoy. The person that sought this opinion does fall within the covered individual definition, which on page 2 of the advisory opinion, we do explain what that means, and they fall into it by way of the procurement employee provision. We then go through the definition of gift, and the question was whether attending social events provided a violation. I referred to the state statute on the gift ban. There's actually two provisions dealing with gifts in Part 3 of Chapter 112. There's the 112.313, which requires the gift to be contingent on a favorable act. And then there's 3148, which has a outright ban on gifts, which is more similar to what we've adopted at the local level. And there was a case where a PSC commissioner was attending social events, he and his wife with another couple, and the husband of the other couple was an attorney that practiced before the PSC, and they found that just attending those social events was not a violation of the gift ban, as long as nothing of value passed from the husband or his wife to the commissioner or his wife. The second opinion, and so essentially I said that there is no violation here if all they're doing is having a social night and they're going Dutch and paying their own way. Opinion 03, I broke into two sections. This was an individual, a city employee that attends a conference. They had two questions. At the conference, one, commonly you'll see booths set up where vendors will give out, and I actually use the word tchotchke here, that people could take with them. The question was, would taking that tchotchke be a violation of the gift ban? It would if the person were a covered individual, because that's what our gift ban, that's who our gift ban is applicable to. If they were just an employee, they would be fine to take that. However, if they were a covered individual, I argue that because we don't have that for the purpose of influencing a decision that's in 112.313 of state statute, but rather we have a more stringent definition of our gift ban, I would say that that would be a violation and advise them not to do so. The second question was whether there would be a door prize, and the door prize would be in excess of $100, and whether they would be permitted to do that. Now, if they were a city employee, I think they would fall under the 112.3148, which does have that $100 cap. However, if they were a covered individual, I would say that they can't participate in the door prize whatsoever. So I do distinguish the inquirer did not specify their job duties, so I couldn't determine whether they were just a plain employee or whether they were a covered individual under our ordinance. So the gift ban only applies to one group as opposed to the other. So I tried to lay that out to provide proper guidance, and I cited some opinions from the State Commission on Ethics dealing with door prizes, and the Commission on Ethics dealing with the Osceola County employee was good because it was a $500 cash door prize, and for that they did distinguish being the 112.313 and the 3148. So I think that best applied here, and I cited that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Any comments? A motion to approve the advisory opinions?
So moved.
A motion,
Second.
second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 9, revision of city ordinance on misuse of position.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, this is an issue we discussed briefly at the last meeting. I don't have any proposed language. I legally said at the last meeting I wanted to give you an idea so you could look at different jurisdictions and how they handle the issue, and then the board could make a determination. I think we also discussed how could we possibly revise the penalties provision of our ordinance to give us a little more flexibility so we don't get stuck in a bind where somebody like the Commissioner Porter issue where we felt it was de minimis. I think we were able to not find probable cause because of the reasonable knowledge. But now that it's happened, I think you kind of only get one bite at that apple. So I do think that this does need to be addressed. I do have to somewhat push back on the issue that because we removed corruptly and went to the language we have now means that we have to automatically just go back to the way it used to be. Since day one, I've said, Mr. Floyd has said, there should be a happy middle that provides some, doesn't put us back to where we were, where I think we weren't as stringent as we wanted to be, but also at the same time doesn't provide uncertainty among our city officials. I think what Ms. Porter did, our misuse of position does not only provide that a benefit or special privilege be gained by the individual, but also by another, which is pretty broad. And the argument at that point was that this individual who owned this restaurant was getting free marketing by a city commissioner on a city Facebook account, and that was the issue. So I think we'd like to find some way in which we can, because I think what she was doing was actually a very good thing to do, especially during the pandemic when a lot of local businesses, especially in the hospitality industry, were suffering. So I think we'd like to see one way Miami-Dade does exploitation, but they also do not have the corruptly. Palm Beach also has, well, Palm Beach has actually two different ordinances. One does not have corruptly, one does have corruptly, and they treat those differently. And then Jacksonville, I think was one that I liked. There was one, okay, now I can't find it, but I think Palm Beach and Jacksonville have language that references the proper performance of their duties, and I think I had mentioned that at the last meeting. That may be a possible fix that keeps us from having to go back to a word such as corruptly and heightening our burden of proof, but at the same time provides individuals the flexibility to do certain, take certain actions that may benefit somebody, but it, in all practical purposes, falls within what most people would expect to be the public duties. As far as the penalties issue, I know it was brought up about the written letter of instruction, and we do have that in our penalties section. The issue with that, and I know Mr. Floyd and I have discussed this many nights, is we have to find a violation. And I think if we were to attempt to enter into settlement agreements with individuals that maybe they made an honest mistake or something, and this is an opportunity for it to be a learning experience, I think there would be an incentive for us to not have to litigate and bring in a court reporter and do it. Not if we could find some way where there's no admission of fault, but there's a letter of instruction to just provide almost an advisory opinion after the fact. And that may be, so I think there's possible solutions by, in the misuse section, providing some language that says it has to be within the public duties or what's expected to be their public duties. And then as far as the penalties section, we may wish to see if we can include language similar to what we see in Miami-Dade, Palm Beach, and Jacksonville, which provides for this dismissal, and then they could actually enter a letter of instruction after dismissal and without a finding of fault, which I think is I think what would probably get us to be able to dispose a lot of these issues easier. So those are some of the issues I wanted to bring up, just kind of a matrix so you can look and see what other jurisdictions are doing. I don't have any specific language to recommend today, and that was by design. I wanted to just throw this at you and give and allow you to guide me.
Thanks, John. Someone to talk about this other than me.
You can start it.
Well, you know, when I joined this board, my feeling about ethics is that you know it when you see it. You know if you're violating, if there's something you're doing is wrong. It's sort of reasonable that we would all know it just by talking about it. When we were on the Zoom call about Commissioner Porter, I actually felt that we knew that she wasn't intentionally doing anything wrong. I mean, I felt that way. And so I didn't even think it should necessarily go forward because of that kind of reasonable standard that at least as I saw what had occurred. And it was something that frankly I had dealt with as an elected official myself, where these events that public, social media gets involved in that are of a public benefit. which, small town, small businesses, small business, what was it, Small Business Saturday or Small Business Friday or something like that? So I have a real hard time with this because as a lawyer myself, I think our language that we use, which is why I referenced Mr. Floyd's comment earlier, I think the language we use matters. And I don't think it should be, and I don't want to use a bad word, and I'm not going to. I don't think it should be so confusing. And to me, I left that one. And to me, this is, what we did was make it so that people could understand that just if don't do something that reasonable people would think was wrong. And using the word corruptly, just to me, I understand because I've heard all the legal standards and I've heard the case law, but to me, the word corruptly, people who are just normal human beings who are reading the language don't interpret corruptly the way that we are trying to say that what corruptly stands for. Robin, I don't know your experiences with this as a lawyer dealing with these issues, but to me, the word corruptly indicates that, it's a pretty high standard. You're really doing something really wrong. You're corrupt. And that's not the way, as John has explained to me, the case law explains it, right? I mean, the way I see it is backwards from the way the case law sees it. Shocking that it would be that way for me. But what I want is for language that a normal human being who is not a lawyer, who's not reading the case law, would read it and understand this is the standard we hold the officials that we have some jurisdiction over, Mr. Sims, that this is what we hold them to. That if you feel like it's wrong, just don't do it because you're going to be violating the ethics ordinance. So ends my comment on the issue.
If I may, and I think I did find that language that I was referencing. If you go on the misuse of public position on page 2, the Jacksonville Code of Ordinances, there's language in a manner inconsistent with official duties. And I think language like that might be what we need to get us over this hump, where we don't need to go back to a corruptly, which I will agree, I do think the first DCA rewrote the statute on the bench, which they probably shouldn't have done, but they did. But nevertheless, it is somewhat confusing, but I think in a manner inconsistent would have, using the example we used with Commissioner Porter, I think would say what she did is very consistent with her public duties, so it would not fall to a violation here. So it's a possibility.
You're an attorney too, aren't you, Carla?
So they say. So,
There's a lot of us.
yeah, too many.
Been accused of worse.
There's good attorneys are what we're on the side of good attorneys.
I think the issue with we're using Porter case, but the issue with Porter case is the fact that we didn't have a process to deal with that situation. We had the language, we understood what the issue was, and looking at the language of the other ordinances, ours is not far off as far as the definition of improper use of public office or misuse of public office. We can tweak a little bit to clarify what that may mean as far as, incorporating some of the language Jacksonville. But I think the main issue is that we had to, before we can move forward, we could try to issue a letter, but there's no letter if there's no issue. And that was the thing, we had to find there was an issue first, then to move forward, we had to find there was no violation, then we could issue a letter, because that was where the conflict was. We want to issue a letter saying no harm, no foul, but bear in mind this in the future. So I think it deals more, we can tweak the language a little bit. Our language is not that far off. I think it's the process that's going to be the issue as far as allowing us at the front end to find out, okay, this is de minimis, there's no real violation here. We can take steps now to issue a letter, a recommendation, almost like an advisory opinion, but we have no mechanism now because of our charter. That's the issue. I understand what we have right now.
The steps that we've taken, for instance, with Commissioner Porter, is that like precedent? I mean, is that something we can then look to in future cases? I mean,
Technically, you're not really supposed to.
no, okay, all right, okay,
Every case is supposed to be seen fresh.
okay. That's too bad, because, I think as we work through these, we see what does meet, what falls underneath that language and what doesn't, but.
So I don't know if the right course of action is, tweaking the code ordinances, that's fine, but is it one of, we have to move forward with changing the process that allows us the opportunity to dismiss on the front end these cases? And that may require, I understand, a change of the charter, is that correct?
No, I
Can
think
it be
just the
done?
ordinance.
Just the ordinance?
Just the
Just the
ordinance,
ordinance.
which we can do, right? I mean, we just have to agree to.
You have to submit it to the city commission.
Okay.
It has to go to the city? The city
Yeah,
has to?
City would have
approve
to do it, yes.
Okay.
So then, as far as the language for misuse of public position, is there any concerns or, that this current language right now is,
Here he comes. All right.
I just want to agree with Mr. Reed. I think that language in the Jacksonville ordinance is excellent.
bring it in? So that's a recommendation from the board. We need a motion, do we have to have an action on that, a vote on that? That we.
Sure.
Can you read it out loud, what the change would be and what it would sound like, so I can?
Okay, hold on.
Meeting the standard of plain language that any human could understand what was
So I
expected
guess
of
it
them.
I guess it would say, no public official or employee of the city shall use or attempt to use his or her official position or any city property or resource which may be within his or her trust or perform or fail to perform his or her official duties in a manner inconsistent with official duties and in a manner which he or she knows or should know with the exercise of reasonable care will result in a special privilege, benefit, or exemption for himself or herself or others. Or something like that.
Well, that's basically what we have right now, right?
That's right.
But he
Except I just add
Is
that,
that, okay, is that a little
consistent.
just add that one language.
language there, okay?
I just add the language in a manner inconsistent with official duties.
Okay, that's the part right there,
It's the
that's all it takes.
fourth line of the Jacksonville
Got
Code.
it. Okay, okay,
Where would we stick that additional clause?
I would put it after the word duties and before in a manner.
Okay.
So we would actually have two in a manners. In a manner inconsistent with official duties and in a manner which he or she, I may clean that up so it doesn't sound so choppy, but essentially that's, just from looking at it and not
Yeah,
finessing it, that's what it
Would
would.
you want him to massage it and bring it?
I think this is really important, frankly.
Oh, yeah, no.
I mean, that's why we spend so much time. So I don't want us to approve any new language until
Oh,
we
no.
have it seen, how it's gonna read.
Oh, I was, that was my intent, was to try to get you to direct me to bring it back.
Yes.
Can we just say, don't do it, it's gonna be front page news in the Tallahassee Democrat? Okay, I'm just kidding, y'all. But I mean, just,
That's the gist of it, that's what it means.
yeah.
Don't embarrass us.
Yeah, there's an inherent ambiguity in which is good. It gives us leeway then.
If we get to look at the language again, I would appreciate that. I think one of the things needs to be is it an and or an or between those two in the manner clauses? And I don't know that sitting here right now, I have a recommendation about which it is, but I think we would want to look at that, whether you have to have both or
Himself
whether it
and or
could be
herself and or other, yeah.
one or the other. And then the other thing is, I think that trying to make this a little more objective and a little less subjective helps everyone, because then we give notice of what type of activities are prohibited or what types of things we like or we don't like. I think we were right on the issue with Commissioner Porter, because I think that as the ordinance was written, what she did violated the ordinance.
Right.
Now, but we may have felt uncomfortable with that because we didn't agree that she did it in a way that was corrupt or that resulted in some outcome that we thought was something that we shouldn't support. So trying to improve that, part of that is, developing the ordinances. And then I think, Mr. Floyd, I don't mean to throw this at you, and I would offer my help in this, is if we're going to include something that says in a manner inconsistent with official duties, we have to let them know what we think is in or out of their official duties. And I think that's proper for the board to give some education on.
That would vary quite a bit according to their position. So,
Might have to get a little more technical than what we're used to, but that's part of what that's where a lot of these cases are going to come out, is was this within what I was supposed to be doing in that position, or is it outside?
Mr. Reed?
I think it would be and.
Okay.
Because I think if it were or, then there would be a case where you could just you would just go back to the language as it is already. Because then it would be one or the other, and then the other is what we have in the existing ordinance now. So I think it would have to be and.
Where are you talking about?
We said in a manner inconsistent with his or her official duties, or in a manner which he or she knows, then that means that one clause, in a manner with official, can be removed, and you could read it absent that. And I think we need to read them together, because it needs to be not only something that's outside what one would normally expect to be something a commissioner or a staff person or a procurement employee would do, but also that they would know through a reasonable exercise of care. But I know I could work with you, and I told you before the meeting, I'd like to work with you before we come back because of your expertise on the issue.
I appreciate that. I would enjoy working with you on that and making sure that whatever language we eventually come up with is reflective of the intent of the board, so.
And I'll set up the lunch meeting.
I love
You know
this.
what
Now go out. Now go out again. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love the plan. I think that's great. And we'll come back with something that we can review again next meeting, whether I'm here or not, I do not know. But my lasting attention to this issue will always be part of the Tallahassee Independent Ethics Board, so.
So, Mr. Reed?
Did the board want to look at the penalties issue? And again, we're not passing anything today, it's just.
Yeah, just before we move on, any more discussion on the misuse of public position? Okay, let's move on to
Another
penalties
plan.
then. I think this is the issue we have as far as the options we have when a complaint is filed.
The way it is right now, you can't not issue a letter of instruction or anything else until there's probable cause. And that's, you need to be in position to do that and still dismiss or, or something in between. And I think Ms. Porter's case is a good example.
See, my idea, I think, is the ideal, is right now looking at it, because it gives the option to dismiss it, but also requires us to report on any dismissals or why we dismissed that case as well, which I think is very important.
And I will say, some of the other jurisdictions, like Jacksonville, they said they rarely do complaints. When they get a complaint, when somebody calls in a complaint, they usually just pick up the phone and say, hey, you need to stop doing this. And they do it very informally. I'm not saying we need to do it to that degree, but I think the pendulum, we need to get the pendulum to stop somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And this is something I could bring back. The word that jumps out is the word violation. I think that's the key, because I think there's going to be a lot of individuals that would like to settle this and say, you know what, okay, I'll be more careful next time.
Right.
But they know once they've admitted to a violation, the direct mail piece in their next campaign's already been made, and we gotta be aware of that. And I think that there's going to be no incentive for anybody to settle or any type of stipulation with us if that word's there. So we may be able to find something where we can try to remedy the issue, but not tar the person too much.
Unless they deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, if they, no. But of course, if they do something that we feel rises to probable cause and needs to be pursued, we have that option.
I do think it's important that we have some for someone that really doesn't deserve to have their reputation be called into question. Which is how I felt about Commissioner Porter, and I agree with you, Robin, that it did meet the language that we had laid out. But I just knew that, I knew enough about the issue to know that it was not an ethics violation. But we still had to your point again, we had to go forward because we had set that standard. So I understand where we are. I just know we have to come out on the other side of this, resolving the subjective nature of the language possibly, and as much as possible. But holding the people that we are, the reason we were established was to hold them accountable, that we don't lose the ability to do that in the process.
Chairman.
Yes.
I would, Ms. Graham, I agree with you. The language that bothers me the most about the Miami-Dade County is the insubstantial language. So I know what inadvertent means. I know what unintentional means. Insubstantial, I think, is more in the eye of the beholder in a way that could potentially cause us some issues. And I'll say what I've said before, which is I don't think that there are any small ethical violations.
100%.
I think there are ones that provide small benefits or provide small advantages, and we might need to give the board or our executive director a way to manage those efficiently. And also that I'm not in the business of protecting anyone from the consequences of ethical violations, but I do understand that this board has a lot of power, and we need to exercise it in a way that that is equitable. And we are at a point now where we've got to figure out how to do that, because we've had enough cases where it's caused us some consternation. So, I understand that, and if we say everything's going to require an admission of a violation, that's not going to do us any good because there's no motivator there. But agreeing to a set of facts, I think potentially could be a middle ground there where everyone agrees and understands about what happened, and then we come to some sort of a resolution that doesn't require this extensive use of resources. We are also stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we need to take that seriously as well. So I'm glad that we're having the conversation. I think that there's probably a way to do it that resolves that tension. But I would want a definition of what insubstantial is if we're going to be using that language.
Ms. Costa.
And I was actually going to bring up a similar point, but I was going to say I actually probably would be more uncomfortable with leaving that word in, period, just because of the nature of, like you said, any violation, big or small, and for someone to say, oh, I just thought it was unsubstantial.
Tiny thing.
Right, is that, to me, I would be more comfortable just leaving that one out. I do like the inadvertent and unintentional, because I think that's kind of what we were talking, again, referencing the border, is that truly was trying to support something. I go back when, like, to your dad that used to, like, pick different professions to spend a day in when he was governor, and would, I mean, gosh, all those businesses that got highlighted back then.
Times have changed.
But, times have certainly changed, but I can still remember that because that was something that I think the community thought, oh, what a great thing that.
Oh, he was coming in and highlighting
Yes,
this, yeah.
and would go and be a farmer for a day, or he would go do different things just to experience that and be able to share that and feel like it was a part. So I think she was doing a very similar thing, and we all feel the same, I think. But, but I don't really like the insubstantial, because somebody could say, oh, well, a meal is insubstantial. Or somebody could say, well, that concert ticket was insubstantial. So I think that leaves such a wide variety that I would probably just leave that one out. I think the inadvertent and unintentional speak for themselves in what we're trying to say with this when I look at the language. And I do feel strongly that we have a process where we can write a letter before admitting the guilt with instruction. One of them had issue a letter of instruction. I like that without having it be the full court press. We can slide that in before we have to, again, have the court reporter and all those kinds of things.
Question, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
John, do those types of documents have to go in any personnel file, or what are the rules on that?
Oh, I'm not aware of that. I would have to check with HR and see if there's
Yeah,
anything that.
okay. Just curious whether that is confidential or whether it then becomes something that follows them.
Well, I mean, it would be a public record once we get through the probable cause hearing and we decide at that point. That's essentially, I think, the process that would come through. We'd make sure it's legally sufficient. We then move to the next step, which could be a probable cause hearing, and the board could say, okay, we found this to be inadvertent. won't say insubstantial, but inadvertent.
Tiny thing, little tiny.
And let's, obviously they learned a lesson, let's just say, don't do it again and dismiss. We could dismiss, and I think we tried to do that with a prior complaint earlier, so we tried to kind of have it both ways, which, I think we found no probable cause, that we editorialized. I think we've done that on a couple, and I think it'd be better if we just dismissed with a letter of instruction and say, this is actually a letter of instruction.
So that would not, we would not find probable cause.
We would not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just noticed that. They all say the same thing, letter of instruction and those 3 words.
Uh-huh.
Well, we're gonna just say 2 words, right?
Yes. So the instructions from Mr. Reed is to come back for the next meeting with proposed language for the ordinance,
Those 2 ordinances.
those 2 ordinances, and for the penalties using Miami-Dade as a reference, mine is insubstantial. Any more comments on the penalties?
Just a question, changing the language, would that mean that there would be no need for a hearing for legal sufficiency? If it was determined by the ethics officer, for instance, that this doesn't fall under legal sufficiency? If it's, or I'm not sure where it would stand, what we're changing here.
Chair, if I may? Yes. That's a good question. I'm glad you mentioned that. Let me write it in a way where we could maybe address that in policy and not in ordinance, and let me keep the ordinance loose enough where we have some wiggle room and we can work with it and don't have to keep going back to the city commission if we need to do trial and error. It's not the big job of sending it to the city commission and getting them to pass. So let me see if I can write it in a way that accommodates that.
Could you refresh my memory, other than Commissioner Porter, have we run into this issue? Is this the case of first instance where we've run into this?
I think to a degree,
It was very similar to the issue for the mayor that was basically dismissed by
Okay.
Julie Bennett Keefe.
Exactly, believe me, yes.
And Cox too. She was a nonprofit.
We had 2 like this.
Commissioner Cox,
Yes,
Sponsored nonprofit.
yes, okay. So this is our 3rd
Yeah.
issue, okay.
But it would sort of seem like these are the kinds of things that as elected officials, they should be doing.
Right.
Yes, they shouldn't be penalized for actually doing their job.
even when I was doing the investigative report, because the way it's written right now, I could write the report to make it look bad, I could write the report to make it look good. I mean, because it's just so rigid. So this is good. This will help me.
Okay. We want to help you, Dwight.
Mr. Reed, bring back language for the ordinance, but also policy recommendations as well.
Okay.
We'll deal with this matter as far as how we will deal with dismissals and legal sufficiency as well.
Can I say one last thing on this burning issue?
Sure.
When I was looking at our new, recently approved by the board, ethics course, it really struck me. It said, building trust through ethical behavior. And that's why we're all here, because the people of Tallahassee lost trust. So it is through ethical behavior you build trust, and I do think that, I agree with tweaking the language, but I also think we should have a very high standard for those who wish to serve our city. End of my comments officially.
Moving on to agenda item number 10, which is the impact of Senate Bill 1890 on the city charter, section 63.
So, I'll give you some background on both, because this kind of snuck up on a lot of folks. This was, if you were paying attention to the legislative session, preemption was the ongoing theme. The legislature preempted a lot of what local governments can do, and one case is here with the issue of campaign contributions. Senate Bill 1890, we probably all read about it in the newspaper, because it was really directed at one person. It was to prevent a single person from financing citizen initiatives. And it caps the contribution for political committees to sponsor constitutional amendments to $3,000 instead of the gentleman who wrote $5 million checks at a time. So it was primarily done in that manner. The bill was referenced to two committees. In the second committee, they did a committee substitute that changed the statutory language on how you could dispose of campaign funds. And then its last stop on the Rules Committee, they did another committee substitute that added this preemption language that says that the current caps of $1,000 per candidate has to apply to all candidates, and it explicitly says that any restrictions in conflict by a local government entity are void. So we have in section 63 a cap on contributions. Now, you were mentioned in the Tallahassee Democrat over the weekend, so his big moment in the paper.
And I didn't really say anything.
Yes. In 2014, our friends of the coalition put together a charter amendment. They partnered with an organization that created this campaign refund program. The issues were passed together, so the ordinance or the petition that was then sent to the City Commission, passed by ordinance to be placed on the 2014 ballot, created section 61, 62, and 63. Section 61 creates the Ethics Board and creates the Ethics Board, how you're appointed, and then that's the section that includes all of our duties. Section 62 creates the Ethics Office and talks a little bit about the independent ethics officer and budgetary issues. And then section 63 has 4 subsections. The first section deals with the cap of $250, and then Section B is the issue that really applies to us, and that's the refund program, which if somebody were to donate, somebody, I guess, that lives within the city of Tallahassee, they make a contribution to a local candidate, they're entitled to a $25 refund by the city as part of this program. 25 is less than 1,000, so it's not going to really affect us in any way. This is something that will affect the city commission, and however they decide to address it, it doesn't have the teeth that the gun preemption language had a few years back, where there was a pressure to remove it from the statute. Here, I think the statute is clear, it's void, so it could still just sit there and be unenforceable, and that's likely what will happen. But as far as how it affects us, it really does not.
I like Mr. Boutsin's suggestion of a letter of recommendation that lays out everything, that says, our hands are tied as far as the statute goes, but it would be beneficial to follow the will of the people, to voluntarily limit yourself. And I know, in fact, that Democrat article mentions Commissioner Williams-Cox has already voluntarily limited herself to the $250. If we could have a letter, basically a draft, a single letter that could be presented to all of the commissioners and to all candidates for city commission and mayor, once they're registered with the supervisor of elections office, just to lay out the history as Mr. Reed has done with the intent of the ordinance, the original ordinance. This is what the people of the city of Tallahassee have agreed to, or Leon County, I guess was. I'll make it clear that there is no legal limit still, or at least not what it was, but strongly urge people who are after the public approval, they abide by it.
And before Ms. Costa, I understand the sentiment, but I don't see that as a role of the board to chastise them on.
I'm not talking about chastising.
No, but still, we're not advised, it's coming from the ethics board saying, by the way, you should keep it at 250, just saying. We're not here just saying. We're saying here's the policy you should follow or not follow, recommendations going forward. To say somebody, and then if somebody doesn't accept somebody over 250, to say, oh, look, the ethics board said he should have done that, or recommend he should have done that. From my position, I don't think it's there's no violation if they accept over $250 under the law. Am I mistaken? If they accept a donation of $1,000, they're fine within the law. There's no violation of ethics if they accept $1,000 or more. Why are we getting in the middle of this? There's no need for us to put ourselves in this issue when they cannot accept it. They're not violating law, they're not violating ethics. We understand the history, it's their decision as individuals to do that. They can do a public statement if they want to do that, but for us to come out there with a letter saying, here's the history, it's not, I don't think it's our proper place to do that. But Ms. Costa.
Well, I was gonna say, are we delving further into that, not, potentially not being our place, is because then are we putting somebody at a disadvantage because we've asked them to stick by, and I say disadvantage just if someone has all $1,000 contributions and someone only has $250, are we asking them to be at a disadvantage because this person's still within the law who's accepting all the $1,000 contributions? Yes, that's what Leon County or the city wanted. I can't remember which one it was on, I apologize, but like you said, the Florida law now says this. And so I feel like then is somebody going to come back and say, well, the ethics board asked us to do this. And so now they won because they had more campaign contributions and had more commercials and those kinds of things and had the opportunity to do that because we're trying to ask people to do what the people want. I think it's putting more conflict in our role. As much as I agree with it and I voted for it, but I do think it may be outside of our scope.
If you have a cruise ship, you can just dump people in Key West all you want.
There you
No
go.
matter what the people at Key West are.
Any discussion?
Thank you.
Ms. Blank.
I agree with you, Ms. Costa. You know, the legal requirement is always the floor. And then there's always this question of, okay, well, what's the ethical requirement? If it's something that's greater than the legal requirement. And sometimes there's room for us to provide some real guidance there. And sometimes it puts us in waters where we might.
I gave you that water, didn't I? Because I brought up the
We might all have to go to the restroom if we keep talking.
I do, actually.
Well, I'll speed it up. So there's always that conflict. And then, you know, there's also the possibility that there is a constitutional challenge to this law, you know, that invokes Citizens United. And then we would be stuck with our statement, but we would be grounding it in a law that has potential risk. And so I don't know if we're ready to do that right now because this is brand new and we just don't know where it's going to go.
Let's see it play out a little bit. But I think you're from a moral, ethical standpoint, Ernie, you're 100% right. But from a political standpoint, you know, people have to make decisions all the time. Do I take PAC money? Do I not take PAC money? There's nothing that prevents me from having, but if I don't take it, then I'm going to have less money than the other candidate. So, I mean, this is now the local level. Do I limit myself to fourth of what everybody else is going to get?
I will defer to the politicians.
But I'm not saying, I'm not, look, I mean, I wish money didn't play such an important role in politics. So. All right, I think we've resolved that, though, through good, healthy conversation.
Any further discussion? Moving on to public comment on non-agenda items.
None.
None. Number discussion on regarding items for future meetings.
One, and I'm not springing this on anyone because I did mention it to Mr. Reed before we started. There's a city auditor report that just came out, I think, within the last couple of days.
To read it, and I
on,
didn't read it last
the
night.
ethical culture. I think it's brand new. But we'd like to see if we have the ability to play a role in responding to any of those recommendations or working with the city auditor to respond to any of the items in that report at some later date.
And I haven't looked at it yet. I was actually made aware of it from the time that I started this position. And we've been talking, IG Sutton and I have been talking about the survey and the report from the beginning. And, you know, he shared a little bit with me, you know, what is a concern, what isn't. But of course, he had to share it with the commission, city commission, before he could share it with us. So I'll communicate with him and, you know, explain to him that this is you let him know, this is a friendly environment. So he can, I'll see if he can come share personally.
Do we got a copy of the?
Yeah,
report?
I have a copy of it. I was gonna
next
send it to you so that you can
I've
send
already
it.
sent it to him, so
Oh,
you've
okay.
already
You
got
don't
it.
need
Yeah, I'll make sure everybody gets
I
it.
know.
I do want to point out that at the last city commission meeting, Commissioner Porter brought up that the audit report at the end. It was not on the agenda. I believe it was released in public after the agenda came out. But Commissioner Porter asked for an agenda item to be put on in the future, probably the next meeting, which will not be tomorrow's budget workshop, but so that the IG can give a formal presentation to the city commission and the public. So,
As far-
Didn't we at one time discuss whistleblower protection, that sort of thing, and talk about it being outside of our purview? Well, of course, that was one of the recommendations. See how they just should listen to us. And give us more authority.
I wanna say something. Are we about to close?
Any directives? Nope, okay.
I just want to say, I do not know what my future holds in terms of timeline. So it could be at any point that I'm confirmed. And at that point, I have already signed an agreement that I will resign from the various boards that I'm on, and I have to do it immediately. So I don't know if this is my last board meeting. It may or may not be. I don't want to have to give these remarks every time, but I just want to say, if it is, how much I have enjoyed being part of this board. And I know we do such important work for the city of Tallahassee, and we are restoring the trust that previous activity has caused the city of Tallahassee to question the officials. And so we're restoring that trust, and that's really, really important. And I know it takes a lot of time and there's a lot of dedication, but I really appreciate it. If this is my last meeting, I want everyone to know how much I have really enjoyed and appreciated and been honored to be part of this team. So,
Thank you for your service, thank you.
if it is, I don't know, I could be here and you all will be like, when are you finally leaving?
Please, all right, please, all right.
You know, but I don't, I wish I could tell you. Believe me, my mom wishes that I could tell you.
Any further discussion? Ms. Barr moves, we adjourn, Ms. Costa seconds. We are adjourned.
All right.